Hey guys, March reading wrap-up time. I'm really excited to go through the books that I read this month because this was the month that I got back into reading. I was a huge reader growing up throughout middle school and high school, and then as I got into college and then started working full-time, the time I had to allocate to reading just dwindled and dwindled, and I was prioritizing other things. I really re-fell in love with reading this month, which was a great feeling, and why I started to pick up the camera again, because I want to take you guys along on this journey. To start, I had a bunch of books on my Kindle that I had only partially read that I wanted to make sure I got through before I started going through my physical books as well. The first book that I actually ended up finishing this month was called Love in the City by Jen Morris. This book follows our main character Alex, who's a hopeless romantic from New Zealand and just freshly turned 30. And on her 30th birthday, she gets dumped. She's heartbroken, and her family kind of just takes this blasé approach to consoling her, and they kind of just basically tell her it's her fault, and it's her fault because she's a hopeless romantic and just falls in love with guys too quickly. She's always had dreams of becoming a writer, and her family has been very dismissive of those dreams. But after all of that happens as our premise, Alex gets drunk one night and books a flight to New York City. She decides, I'm going to start chasing my dreams, I'm going to move to New York like I've always wanted to do, I'm going to write a book like I've always wanted to do, and I'm going to meet a man like I've always wanted to do. We get introduced to our main character Michael in a coffee shop where they get off to a rough first start. And from there, the first few months of their relationship is very rocky. Michael also is a single dad, so you'll get little hints of his son. His son was really sweet throughout the story, and I don't think overpowered the story at all, but it was a nice addition to his background. Overall, though, this book just wasn't really for me. It's the first in a series that follows different women throughout their relationships in New York, and I don't have any intention of finishing that series. For this being an adult romance novel, I felt like the writing was pretty subpar. There is some spice in this book. I would give this like a 2 out of 5 for the spice level, because you do get a couple scenes with them that are spicy and open door, but it's towards the end of the story. There's minimal situations, and I don't think it's something that overpowers the story by any means. So because the story was pretty subpar, I really couldn't get behind our main girl character, and I have no intention of finishing the series. I'm only going to rate this 2 out of 5. The next book, also on my Kindle, was called The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. I don't think I did any favors for myself on this book because it is part of an interconnected standalone series. I believe the first book is called The Worst Best Man, which follows two characters that you do get hints of in the second book. So if you read The Worst Best Man and loved it and wanted to see those characters continued, they are continued pretty heavily in book 2. I had not read The Worst Best Man, and I did not know who these characters were, so I will accept that that one was my fault. Now, whenever it came to our male main character, I could not care about him less. Did not care about his story, did not think he had a worthwhile personality, did not find him like attractive by his description. Our main guy character is named Dean. He works at a law firm, and the story starts off at his wedding. Sloane catches the bride in the stairwell professing her love to another man. And then the story starts off with Sloane breaking apart their wedding. You know, whenever the officiant says, "Does anyone object?" she says, "I object," to these two people that she doesn't know. Which I get it, it's a romance book. These things like don't have to be super realistic, but just the thought of someone who has no idea and has never met this couple before to stop someone's wedding. Then you get Dean's backstory, where you find out that he was actually fake dating the bride for work. So then Dean, still needing to fake date, ends up fake dating Sloane, our main character. You follow them along while he's trying to convince his colleagues at the law firm that him and Sloane are actually a couple. Now, this book I didn't think was written as poorly as the first book, but overall I only found about 6 chapters in the whole thing actually enjoyable, where I left the chapter being like, whoa, I want to read more. That was really entertaining. And the third act conflict that came up, in my opinion, was so dumb, and it also was resolved so easily. It just felt completely unnecessary and just slotted in to have a third act conflict. I just didn't like the pacing. I really didn't like too much about it. Because of that, I had to give it a 2 out of 5 stars. Okay, next I actually have the physical copy of the book. This is Love on the Brain by Hazelwood. I had bought this and The Love Hypothesis at the same time, and I read The Love Hypothesis really quickly and overall did enjoy it. I rated that one 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't anything that blew me away, but overall it was enjoyable and quick to read. After finishing The Love Hypothesis, I went to pick up this one right away. That's when I realized that the main character from The Love Hypothesis and this book literally feel like copy and paste. So then I let it sit on my shelf for another year and a half before I finally picked it up. I decided it was time to pick up Love on the Brain, and overall it is enjoyable. I read it in 2 days. I was able to read 200 pages at a time, and it was really quick and fast to get through. You follow Bee and Levi working on a project for NASA. Overall, I thought Levi was great, but Bee was very frustrating to me and a huge part of why I didn't fully enjoy this book. I wrote down in my Goodreads review that she literally caused all of the issues and the third act conflict. She's convinced from the get-go that he hates her based off of a previous experience, and she makes that her entire personality. Even though it's really clear to see, and he tries to tell her multiple times that he doesn't hate her, and she either cuts him off every time he tries to talk or dismisses the words he says. Just felt there was so much unnecessary conflict between these two characters solely because of her. There is a little bit of spice in this book. I give this one 3 out of 5 for spice level, which I would say is pretty standard in Ali Hazelwood. If you've read The Love Hypothesis, it's the same amount of spice in this one, maybe even a little bit less. Because I was able to get through this so fast, and overall it was an enjoyable read. I decided on a 3 out of 5 rating for this book, so I'm not writing Ali Hazelwood off completely, but I just don't think that she's my favorite author by any means. Okay, this one, back to the Kindle. We have Court of the Vampire Queen by Katee Robert. I just wanted to try something new. All of these romances that I've touched on so far kind of follow the same plot line as most romances do. It's kind of like a gradual sexual tension building. You have them getting together, you have a few pages of happiness, you have a third act conflict, and then they live happily ever after. I just wanted to try something new, and I knew that this was a vampire romance, and I love vampires, so I was like, let's try something out. And I saw that this was the complete opposite of a slow burn. Literally on page 2, there is spiciness going on, and explicit spiciness at that. If you do not like spice, stay away from this book. It is literally 5 out of 5, 6 out of 5 spice level. And at first, whenever she was with the first guy, didn't mind it too much. But then you keep getting characters introduced to the storyline, and it turns into 3 guys, 1 girl. Just nothing about the story was really good. The writing was bad. The plotline was terrible. I seriously considered skipping and just DNFing it, and I ended up skipping certain chapters and literally missed nothing in the storyline because the plot was so poorly laid out. I even read some reviews that are like, hey, I'm not here for the plot. Even if I could take that mindset of like putting the plot aside, again, our female main character was just so useless. If a character is causing themselves their own issues by making dumb decisions over and over again, I just can't deal with it. Which is why I'm really excited to go into the fantasy world, because a lot of the female main characters I've heard about in fantasy books are very strong, independent, capable women, and that's what I need in my life. The book starts off with Mina being sent as a sacrificial lamb to the first vampire that we're introduced to. I'm not exactly sure how you say his name, but I was saying it Malachi throughout reading the book. Mina's dad is kind of like the vampire king of their realm, and he is very powerful. However, Mina was born without powers, or at least so she thinks. Basically, the entire plotline of the book is that every time Mina has the big O with one of these guys, she basically finds a new power within herself, which was just honestly so stupid. You'd have these spice scenes that would end with her reaching her peak and then developing some new power. It was just so dumb. 10 out of 10, would not recommend. Even if you're a fan of spice, I think there's probably so many better books on the market. Now, on a much different note, from weird polyamorous vampires to our First Lady Michelle Obama. Sorry, Michelle. Finally read and finished Michelle Obama's memoir. I've had this book since it came out, which is why I have the hardcover. The paperback hadn't even come out yet, which was about 2018. And back in 2018, I had a book club with my friends where we chose this book, and I ended up only getting to chapter 3. I will say the first few chapters of this book are extremely hard to get through because it is just going in intense detail to her childhood life. And don't know about you, but I wanted to get to the part where she met Barack, which actually doesn't happen until much later on in the book. I realized that Michelle Obama has had a very extraordinary life even before she met Barack, which I absolutely loved. We love a strong, independent queen. This book is thick and there's a lot of words on the page. So even the audiobook of this book was 19 hours long. Just know you're signing up for a very long ride, but I would 100% say it's worth it. 5 out of 5, 6 out of 5. This book was so good. And I previously had no attachment to Michelle Obama. I did not personally think that her and I would have much in common. She grew up as a kid in the south side of Chicago. I did not grow up in a lifestyle anywhere similar to hers, but there was so much that she talked about that I just severely related to her on. One, for instance, is that she's a perfectionist and severely hard on herself. I can fully relate. Also, whenever she does meet Barack and she depicts their relationship together, she describes him as a dreamer, as an idealist, a man with a lot of ideas, and she's extremely pragmatic. She wants to have a plan, she wants to have boxes to check, which I can really relate to. That is the exact dynamic of Hunter and I. He kind of comes up with all the dreams and all the ideas, and I come up with how we actually get there. And again, I would have never thought that Hunter and I's relationship could be at all comparable to Michelle and Barack Obama. I laughed in this book, I cried in this book, I was so overjoyed at some parts, I was so unbelievably heartbroken, I was frustrated. There were so many moments in this book that she describes her feelings and her experiences so well. I truly don't know if I will ever read a memoir this well written ever again, because this was just phenomenal. Now, following on to the memoir journey, we have Untamed by Glennon Doyle. To cut straight to it, this book I actually DNF'd. Going from Michelle Obama's eloquent, detailed, thorough, logical writing style to this, it was so hard to get through. I pushed myself to get to over 100 pages to say that I really gave it a shot, and as soon as I got to 100 pages, I took a sigh of relief and was like, thank God I can put this down. The writing style in here is so sporadic and jumpy, and it just feels like a severe series of unfinished thoughts. Like, let me read you a chapter of this, because her chapters, like, this is an entire chapter right here, just this one page. The title is Adam and Keys, and it goes, a few years ago, Alicia Keys announced to the world that she was done wearing makeup. She said, I don't want to cover up anymore. Not my face, not my mind, not my soul, not my thoughts, not my dreams, not my struggles. Nothing. That's it, I thought. A while later, I read an interview with Adam Levine. He said that while they were filming a show together, he poked his head into Alicia Keys' dressing room. She had her back to him and she was leaning into the mirror putting on lipstick. He smiled and said, oh, I thought Alicia doesn't wear makeup. She turned around, looked at him, lipstick in her hand. She said, I do what the fuck I want. That's it. And that's it. That's the entire chapter. What was I supposed to learn from this? What was Glennon Doyle's contribution to this? I'm just left with like, why am I reading this? Whenever I was getting very frustrated reading this and I was telling Hunter about the writing style, he compared it to, it just sounds like she has a bunch of blog posts in her book, which was honestly a very accurate description. All I know is it's not the book for me. So like 0 stars, DNF, was not a fan. Okay, now back to the Kindle. I read book 3 in the All Souls series, which is the Discovery of Witches series. Book 3 is called The Book of Light. And book 3, if you're following the series, this is where it goes down. There is a huge conflict that is being built up from book 1, 2, and 3 to this moment that happens in book 3 with Matthew, Diana, the congregation, and other players in their life. For me, this book was just so drawn out, and this book could have easily been 200 pages shorter. It was 550 pages, so making 5-10% progress just felt like so much work for not much payoff. And I would actually say this is a rare situation where the show is better than the book. I read book 1 and 2 of this series before I watched the show and was obsessed. Book 1 for me, 5 stars. Book 2 for me, 4 stars. This book here, 3 stars. With book 3, just nothing happens until about 75% through. The first 3/4 of the book are them just being in one location. A problem comes up, they have to move, they go to another location. At the new location, another problem comes up, they have to go to another location. Another problem comes up and they have to go to another location. It just was such a weak plot and such a waste of time. But then this huge conflict that we have such a lead up towards for honestly 1,000 to 1,300 pages gets resolved, in my opinion, a pretty unclimactic way within a chapter or two. I would say the writing is consistent between all of the books. The writing is very good. It's a historical fiction. However, this was just so drawn out, and I feel it could have been so much shorter and so much more enjoyable if this was 350 pages as opposed to 550. So because of that, this book needed some improvements. 3 out of 5 stars. Continuing on with that series, I read book number 4 in the All Souls trilogy, Time's Convert. Now this follows Matthew's son, Marcus. But not only does it follow Marcus present day, it follows Marcus past day, it follows Matthew and Diana present day, and then it follows Marcus's mate present day. For one, Matthew and Diana could have been completely X'd out of this book and saved 10 chapters because their storyline was completely unnecessary. Then, looking on to Marcus's past timeline, I didn't find the past timeline enjoyable at all. You follow his origin story of him becoming a vampire during the American Revolution, and you get a lot of war talk and a lot of historical background. So I was debating between a 2 and a 3-star rating on this because I could have lived my entire life without reading this book. I think I'm gonna settle on a 2.5, but overall, I don't think it's at all necessary to read this book. Potentially, if Marcus ends up being a very key factor in book number 5, potentially we'll want his backstory more. I wasn't someone who was genuinely curious in his backstory and just read this book so I could complete the series. Final book, probably the quickest one of them all, was the first book in the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. You get introduced to Belly and Belly's background with Conrad and Jeremiah Fisher. Both of their moms have been friends forever, had kids at the same time, and they grow up going to this beach house every summer all together. Now Billy's turning 16, she's kind of becoming into a woman, coming into her own, and boys finally start noticing her, which is where the title of The Summer I Turned Pretty comes into play. I had already watched season 1 and 2 of the show, but really I just wanted to know what happens in book 3, so I bought the series of books. These books are so easy to get through. I do find that the show stuck fairly close to the book. Definitely the first half of this book, the show sticks to very closely. Towards the second half, the show definitely took a lot of creative liberty. But overall, the exact same feelings I had towards the character while watching the show, I had the same while reading the book. So my feelings are, I just don't think Belly is that great of a person. She's been obsessed with Conrad for basically her entire life, and Conrad is just kind of a jerk. Jeremiah is so much nicer to her, but Belly treats both of them like crap and a third guy like crap because she just keeps bouncing around between all different guys for basically whoever is giving her attention at that time. I rated this 3 out of 5 because it's cute, it's an easy summer read, but those were the 9 books I read in the month of March. I'm hoping for a lot better reviews this month ahead. I'm really excited about the books that I recently bought. I plan on filming my April TBR so that you guys know what I'll be reading for the month ahead, and I'm hoping to do a reading vlog or 2 during the month of April to take you guys along. For now, I will leave you guys there, and thank you so much for watching.